Hey, welcome to Level Pixel Level, and this is part 2 in my eye rigging tutorial series. In this video, we're going to look at a rigged base system. In the last one, we looked at a shape key base system. So this one is built using a rig, and it's a bit more flexible. It's probably one of my favorite ways to rig an eyelid. I really like rigging an eyelid this way. It's just really free. Let's just take a look under the hood first. There's a bunch of bones originating from the eye center, and they're basically fanning out to the eyelid. This allows the eyelid to roll around the curvature of the eye. It's pretty easy to set up. Once you've done one of these eyelid pieces, you can pretty much do any of them. So let's get to it. Okay, first thing we're going to do is add an armature. Again, you can download all of these files from my Gumroad account. And I have step-by-step files there as well that kind of just go through this process, so you can follow along with the files if you get lost anywhere. I'm just going to put this bone in world space and just lift it up and scale it in. The other thing you want to make sure is that in object mode, your bone is at 0, 0, 0. So I'll flip back to edit mode, and I'm just going to move this about here. It's good right there. And I'm just going to rename this bone head. Okay, I'm just going to duplicate this over here for now, and I'm going to flip back to object mode. I'm going to select on the eyeballs. I just want the center of one of the eyeballs, so I'm going to go to edit mode. I hover my mouse over the mesh and I hit L on my keyboard to select an entire mesh. And I'm going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected. Just going to flip back to object mode, click on my rig again, go to edit mode. With this bone selected, that one that I duplicated, I'm going to do Shift S, selection to cursor. Now I'm just going to rename this eyelid underscore deform dot left dot 001. I can just duplicate this and just push it into space, and I'll rename this right dot 001. Now if I have X mirror turned on, this option right here, if I click on this eye deform left dot 001 and just move it, the right one will snap into place. Now I didn't actually move it at all. All I did was hit G on the keyboard and just click with my mouse. And it shifts that one because of the X mirror. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to click on the face mesh and just turn on wireframe. I use this a lot while I'm working on something like this, just to really see where I want these to be. So what we want to do is have a bone basically on each segment of the eye. So each of these segments is going to get its own joint. We're going to ignore the corners of the eye for now and just focus on the eyelid itself, just to get these pieces built and in place. The idea with the bone being at the center of the eye is that the eyelid actually sort of comes right here and right here, and we want that eyelid to flow along the curvature of the eye. This is going to be better than a shape key method because it's going to allow us to push the eyelid into more shapes without having to worry about the eyelid conflicting with the eyeball geometry. So let's get to it. Go to edit mode with your rig selected and just go to front view. You can even turn on snap for this and vertex. And if I turn on X-ray, I can see that bone, and I just have the tail of the bone selected. So what I want to do is just snap to this vertex about right there. Now with this selected, I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate, and then I'm going to hit R. R will just let it rotate, and I'm just going to put it into space here. It doesn't really matter where. And I'm going to sort of do that again just along the eye. Just hitting Shift D and R, and I'm just placing that approximately where it's going to be. Now I can select all the tails of these bones, and I still have snap enabled. I can see where that eyelid base is by these 3 lines that are built to hold the eyelid shape. With the tail of the bone, I'm just going to hit G and snap to that point. And I'll just do this across the board. So that's pretty good for the top eyelid, and again, since I have X mirror turned on, I'm doing this side as well. I'll select this bone again, and I'll do Shift D R, and I'm going to do the bottom lid now. Same way, I'm just hitting Shift D and R to just rotate that lid around. I'm not really worrying where it is right now, as I'm going to place these all manually anyway. So same thing, grab the tails of the bone and just place them here. Pretty easy to do once you get into it. It's kind of just the same method repeated over and over again, so it's just a duplication of this system. You can add to this with a couple layers of these fans, but then it gets a bit more complicated. Okay, this is looking good. I'm going to do one more thing. I'm just going to fix the axes. Essentially what I want this to do is, as this rolls, it's going to come across the eye like this. And that this one's going to come across and sort of meet that eyelid over there. Just make that white, just so you can have that axis rotate into it. So on the rig, under viewport display, just turn on axes. And what I can do is select on each of these bones and just change the roll. I'm going to adjust this later as well too. I just want to get something nice right now where the z-axis is sort of going across all these eyelid pieces. And it's quick just to go through and adjust these. For the bottom eyelid, I actually want to match the X. So I'm going to flip that right around. And what that means is that the x-axis here is pointing in this direction. I want to do the same thing with this bone here. I want the x-axis to point in this direction. That's going to allow my drivers to remain consistent later on in the process. So I'll just keep adjusting these rolls, and I'm just sort of matching them into place. Again, I'm going to come back through and refine these later. This part of the process is more just to get a nice base, a nice start. Okay, that's looking good like that. Let's actually weight paint this. Then all we have to do is worry about the rigging aspect of it. So go to object mode, click on the face here, shift click on the rig, and do Control P. And I want to do armature with empty bone groups. I'm going to weight paint this all manually. But now if I click on the face, I've actually built all of those bone groups, and I can just get right into weight painting. First thing I want to do is flood everything to the head bone. What this is going to allow me to do is actually take weight paint away from the eyelid bones as I work through them. So there's a quick way to do this. Just select the face mesh, go to edit mode, select all the vertices, click on the head, and you can actually assign weights in edit mode with this assign option here under the vertex groups. So I'll just click assign. Now I can flip right to weight paint mode, and I'm just going to turn off select on the eye here, just so I don't select it. Now if I control click, and I've done a weight painting video where I've gone over how to activate this hotkey, I can go along and just change the vertex group that I'm working with. So there's my head group right there. I'll just flip to wireframe. You can see that it's weighted 100%. And if I click on any of these eye deform pieces, they actually have 0. And you can see that by the blue. And I'm just going to make sure a couple settings are turned on. Make sure auto normalize is turned on. What this means is that as I paint these eyelid groups, it's going to subtract from the head group. And the other option is down here under options, make sure that X mirror is also turned on. This means that as I paint the left side, the right side will also paint to the corresponding joint. Put the weight and the strength at 1 as well, and we can use add for now. That'll be fine. You could also use mix, but I prefer the add option. Okay, so you can control click on these bones, and I've done a tutorial video on how to activate this. You just have to turn off a hotkey, and it makes it a lot easier to select bones in weight paint mode. So with this one selected, and I'm just going to add to this control here. And as I get to these outer lid pieces, I'm just going to paint a little bit of a fall off. You can do this by making your brush a little bit bigger, or even flipping it to subtract, and turning down your weights and just subtracting a little bit here. So that looks like a good fall off for that one. I'll go back to add, and I'll just work my way through these pieces here. Weight painting is pretty quick when you get into it, especially when you're doing something like this. It's very procedural. We're not doing something that complicated like a spine or an arm. We're just really painting 100% to the eyelid base and then doing a little bit of a fall off to the outer edge. It's a pretty quick method, and I'm probably just going to speed up the video here while I just go through and weight paint the rest of these pieces. Okay, that's ready to go. And now if I just click on my right bones here, these right joints, you see that it's already painted over to there, which is going to be a huge time saver later on. Don't worry about being 100% accurate with this too. Once we start playing with the blink options, we're going to come back through and refine the weight painting. This is usually my process. Build the bones, do a quick weight paint, build the controls, refine the weight painting. It just makes the whole system a lot easier. Okay, let's go back to object mode and let's do a bit more rigging. So I'll go back to solid mode, click on the rig, and we could actually isolate it for this. So I'm going to go to view, local view, toggle local view. Okay, so I need a lid control for the top and the bottom. I'll click on the head control and I'll just duplicate it forward. I'll move it over. I'll just rename it eyelid control.left.001. I'll just duplicate this over anywhere and just rename it right.001. Because I have X mirror on, I can just scale this down. It's just going to match. I'll just move this up a little bit. I'll duplicate this down. And there's my bottom lid. So what we're going to do is actually drive the rotation of these bones with the location of this bone. So I'll flip to pose mode. And I'll click on the first one here. So we're going to drive... Actually, we just got to fix the rotation. Select everything, do Control R and flip it to X, Y, Z Euler. We're going to drive the Z rotation here. First thing I want is the property. So click on this bone and right click on the Z axis and do copy data path. Then click on this bone here, right click on the Z rotation and do add driver. Just make it var for now. And we're going to make it a single property and the armature is the prop and he's got to paste this in. Now I've talked about this in other driver videos. The location will only paste in the location channel. You have to actually do .z to activate that Z axis on the location. Now if I move this, I'm getting an eyelid control. A couple things, I want to move down to activate this down. So I'm going to edit this driver and I'm just going to make it negative var for now. I'm also going to make it var times 10 just to give it a bit more accuracy. So now if I move this down, I'm getting that eyelid there. Let's quickly just copy this driver to the other top eyelid pieces. I can do this by right clicking on it and do copy driver and then right click on this and paste driver. I'm just pasting this driver along these pieces here. And now I have this. Let's actually make this driver a little bit better too. Preemptively, you might not want all of these to go down at the same time to make this curve. Let me bring back the mesh to show you what I'm talking about. As I bring this down, it's not even right now to about here. I might want this one to come down to here and this to come down to here to actually make a nice flat eyelid at the bottom there. Again, don't worry about the weight painting. We're going to come back and fix that. I could go through each of these and edit the driver and make this times 12 and come to here and edit the driver and make this times 30 and just keep going through and then keep going through trial and error to see if it's going to work. I'm actually going to set up a panel. So on this control here, I'm actually going to add 6 properties. And I'm going to rename them eyelid top.001. Property value is going to be at 1, and the maximum is just going to be at, let's do 30 for now. I'm going to rename these all to that. So I'm going to do eyelid top 2, and I'll make it 30. Okay, I have my 6 attributes made now. And I'm just going to copy the data path from this one right here. I'll go to this control here. I'm going to go to edit driver. I'm going to add a variable. And this is just var001. We could just rename this eyelid. And it's the armature again. And I'm just going to paste in the data path that I copied. Now, instead of negative var times 12, I can do negative var times eyelid. So as I click and drag this, I can actually come down to here and drive the value of that lid there. There's a couple more things we're going to deal with just before we fix this as well. Let's go through though and just do all of these drivers in that same way. So I'll right click this and just copy the driver. I'll come to the second one here. I'm just going to paste over top of the driver here. And I'm going to edit it. And instead of 001, I'm just going to make it 002. And I'm just going to go along and paste the driver right over that old driver. Edit the driver, make it 003. It's pretty quick to do this once you've done it a couple times. And you'll get quicker at this as well as you do it more and more. Once you combine drivers and rigging, you can do a lot, especially with eyelids, just to make things a little bit easier. Okay, that's done now. Let's just go to front view and let's just drag this down to about here. This isn't moving because this value is at 0 right here. Okay, so I want this at about right here to activate this down to here. That's about 5. And I'm just going to drag these other values down just so they come down to pretty much a flat line here. Okay, so these ones are not activating for some reason. I see. It's because I did not set the max to 30 here on these drivers, so I'm not going past 1. So now I can drive these and get a nice flat lid. I can check out the lid anytime by just flipping to render only. Now there's a couple problems, and first one is the axes. So this one is kind of coming across right now. It's coming in this direction like this. I kind of want it to go a bit more down here. And same with these, I want them to be a bit more even in the way that they're coming down. So I can actually fix this in edit mode. And I can do this by clicking on the bones, turning on axes, and just adjusting the rolls a little bit. It's okay to adjust the rolls here, it's non-destructive. And so I'm just playing with these and just sort of flattening them out a little bit just to get them working. Okay, now back in pose mode, I'm getting a much nicer line here and a much flusher line across that eyelid. Especially if I turn on only render here, you can see sort of what we're getting with that eyelid. What's great about this system as well is I can bring this down here and actually adjust it without having the rig visible. So I can now adjust this eyelid and really get that nice sharp line that I'm looking for at that value. Okay, let's clean up one thing. Let's clean up the weight painting a little bit. So I'm going to go to object mode and click on the mesh and go to weight paint mode. You can leave it in this pose, and all I'm going to do is click on some of these controls here and just give this a little bit more value. Under my tool, I still have add-on with lower values, and so I'm just smoothing out the eyelid now. I find add works better than mix. I prefer it most of the time. It's just a little bit easier to work with. And I'm just sort of smoothing out this eyelid and giving it these final values. So this can be 100% or close to 100%, and doing a bit of a fall off to those other values there. It's pretty quick, not too much to it here, just sort of getting that eyelid nice and straight across so that when I do the final rig, it's going to look really nice. Go back to object mode, click on my rig, and I'll just test this out. Yep, that's getting there. There's a couple issues with some normals here, but I wonder if the subdivision is going to take care of that. I can test that out too. I have a little problem over here as well where the weights from one side are going to the other. Let's fix that right now actually. Let's go back to weight paint mode and let's find out what control it is. I think it's this one right here. So see how there's that value right there? What I want to do is just put mix and put this strength at 1 but the weight at 0. That's going to remove it from that side. Go back to object mode, click on my rig, and just keep sort of playing around with this. There's a lot of testing you can do. One thing you can do as well is click on the face mesh and turn on subdivision. Now you always want the subdivision to calculate after the armature, so I'm just going to move it down. With this control selected, I can now test this out and just flip on render only to see how my lid shape is coming. That's looking really good. Now, one thing you have to do is actually copy this entire system over to the other eye here. So this one is not working right now. You cannot really mirror these drivers. There's not really a tool for it. So you actually have to rebuild this on the other side. So what I'm going to do first is make my properties. There's just 6 of them. And for now, I'm just going to name it eyelid top again. I'm not going to say left or right here. I'm going to show you why later. And I'll make the max 30. So I'm just going to go through and make all 6 of these. Now I might actually make these with code as well. I probably wouldn't go through one at a time to build these. I'm going to select on this one over here, and I'm just going to right click on the driver, and I'm actually going to copy the driver to the right side right here. Now it is going to sort of fly off into space right now. Oops, I accidentally pasted it in the location. I'm just going to delete that driver and 0 at the location and paste it on the rotation. I'm going to go to edit driver, and I just want to make the eyelid dot R instead of dot left. You can actually leave the eyelid top.001 because we left that name the same. So now I can just right click and copy this driver and just really quickly paste it to the other eyelid chunks here. Just moving a little bit because this control here has a value on it. I'll just 0 that out. The other thing I want to do now is just fix a couple things. So I'm going to edit the driver, and I'm just going to make it a positive value instead of a negative. And I'll just go along, and I just have to fix these channels. So I'll make this positive, and this is going to be eyelid.002. I'll go along to this one and edit the driver. This is going to be eyelid.003. I'll just get rid of that negative value. I'll just edit this driver. Okay, that's looking good like that. Just have to do one thing, and that's this value here. I really like these values I've dialed in here. And I want those same values to be on this side here. So what I can do is actually, since this is named left and this is named right, if I click on this and just do Command C, look down here, it's copied pose to buffer. Now if I do Shift Command V or Shift Control V on a Windows machine, I've pasted the pose and I've flipped on X axes. If you click on this control, all of the numbers will now match this side. So now I can grab them both and test them out together. So I can just see what that looks like with this value here. That's looking good like that. It is breaking a bit here. I could play around with that a lot to get that working, but I'm just worried about from here to here for now. I'm really just trying to get a nice blink. This is a little extreme. I'm not going to build the rig to do that for now because I might over-engineer it to do one shape that's never going to be used. The nice thing about this setup is I can also go up on the eye as well, unlike the shape key setup that we were looking at the other day. Okay, so to do the bottom eyelid is pretty much the same process. I'm just going to click here and copy the driver and just paste it here. Then I can edit the driver and just rename the values. So instead of left.001, it's left.002. I also just need to come here on the bottom lids and just add the properties really quickly. Okay, I've added the properties to both the bottom lids, and instead of remaking this driver, I'm just going to copy the top lid driver, click on the bottom one, and just paste it. Now I'm just going to edit the driver, and I'm going to make it left.002 instead, and bottom eyelid, or eyelid bottom in this property here. and eyelid bottom.02 in this second property here. Sometimes when you edit a driver, you just might get this red value here. Just come up here and just hit enter in the expression. And sometimes it'll fix it, sometimes it won't. Yep, there it goes. I just had to paste in the property again. I can just test this out, and it's just moving the opposite direction. I'm going to fix this a different way. I'm going to flip this bone here. So I'm going to go to edit mode and just make the roll 180. Now back in pose mode, when this moves up, that's going to move up as well. I'm going to copy this driver to the other bones here. And I'm going to go through and edit each one. And instead of .001, it's just going to be .002. This is pretty quick to go through and edit. Now I can test this out. Yep, that's working well. Now I can even come through and start driving those values with the roll. So push this one up to here, push this up to here, and I just want to get that nice flat line across the eye. This is working okay. The only problem is I just don't like the way that the vertices are moving. Meaning it feels like it's stretching too far here, so I'll just go to edit mode and just adjust some of these edit mode rolls just to change the axes here. Just to flatten that out a little bit. It's almost there. This one might just need to straighten out a little bit too. Good, that's looking good like that. Now what I want to do is just come in here to about halfway and just adjust these values just to flatten it out a little bit. Cool, now I can just test the top lid as well and just see where that's coming. That's looking really cool right there. I think I like where that is for now, so I'll just copy these drivers to the bottom lid here. I'll copy this driver over to here. And I'll just edit it. This one, again, I know it's going to be in the positive. I want to change it to .right.002. And this value here is fine because I put the same value on both bones. Now I just need to copy and update this driver along these bottom lid bones. Okay, and last thing is I can select this bone here and just copy these values over by doing Control-C or Command-C on a Mac, or just copy pose, and Shift-Command-V to paste the pose. Now, since I named these the same from left to right, I'm going to get that same eyelid action. So now you can see sort of what this eyelid is doing, and what's nice about this is at any time I can sort of drive these values to get more interesting eyelid shapes. Shape key based method, you really can't do this without adding more shape keys. You can sort of combine these structures, but it does get really complicated at that point. This eyelid is nice because I can also maybe transfer this to other characters. It is not based on the mesh except for the weight painting. So even if the vertices were to change on this face, I could maintain my rig and I just have to paint it again. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to do one more method where I do an action-based system. You can keep playing with this system and you can keep cleaning it up. There's a lot more you can add to this, but this is just the basic theory behind how to do a bone roll eyelid technique. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Be sure to download these files as well as you work, because it's going to make it a lot easier to sort of follow along if you get lost at any of the steps. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.